welcome to another episode of Revenue Leaders Uncovered. Super honored to be joined by Jody today from Weidenhammer. Jody, if you can introduce your company, but also yourself.
Good morning, Oliver. Appreciate you having me on here. Again, my name is Jody Pillard. I'm Chief Revenue Officer here at Weidenhammer. We're located in just outside the Philadelphia area here in southeastern Pennsylvania. Been around since 1978. Really what we are at our core is a digital transformation firm. Now, some people use that term to mean a lot of different things, but really for us, it's pretty simple, which it means that we help organizations get the most for their businesses through the use of technology. And we do that through four divisions. One sort of a classical IT consulting division, doing things like managed services, cloud, security, collaboration, but also have divisions that serve other needs of our client base, like application development, integration, business intelligence. And then we have sort of an agency business, as we call it, which handles marketing, digital marketing, and e-commerce. And really that's by design because we serve the mid-market, so sort of 25 to 500 million in revenue, usually a couple hundred employee type folks, much like ourselves, quite honestly, because we understand the challenges that organizations like us face, and we set out to help them.
Yeah, definitely. I know when we first spoke, obviously, really interesting space you've been in. And am I right in saying you've been with Weidenhammer for quite a while now as well?
Correct. Yeah, I just entered my 20th year with the organization.
Yeah, so I know when I reached out, I was like, I've got to talk to Jody. That, I mean, not many people have ever had. I don't really see it very often when people have done nearly 20 years or 20 years working for a company. And obviously, recently moving into the Chief Revenue Officer role, was it around 7 or 8 months ago?
Right, just at the turn of the year, correct.
Yeah, definitely. Well, obviously, happy anniversary for your 20 years. I mean, what an achievement to have done. And I know you guys are obviously on a great journey. I think what would be good for the listeners to understand it and potential clients is what is the unique value proposition of Weidenhammer maybe compared to one of your competitors?
Sure. So a couple of things that our clients tell us are one, and first and foremost, is that our folks we practice every day, we train, and we really focus on listening to the client. Now, that sounds very elementary, right? And it is in a lot of ways. But many organizations don't do that so much. It's easy to become so self-centered that you lose keeping that client as the center of the universe and really listening, not for what can help you as us as Weidenhammer, but for what can deliver the most value for the client. So that's number one. And that takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes practice. So that's one thing we hear from our clients. On sort of the other side of that, but really tied into it, is we also take the time to explain and walk through our line of thinking and really function as consultants to those organizations. And what enables us to do that is that structure that I outlined earlier, where we are not a niche, narrow player. We really do have, particularly unusual for our size and serving our market, a breadth of experience, expertise, and offerings that allow us to be very honest, capable, and candid with our clients and prospects about where we're a fit, where we're not, and really reduce the number of partners that they have to engage with. And I use that term partner very intentionally. We don't want to be a vendor. We don't want to be a reseller. We truly embrace the concept, because we've seen it over 45 plus years, of when our clients do well, we do well. And so if we just focus on them, we will actually lift our own boat as well with that same tide. So those are some things that often sound similar to what our clients and partners and prospects hear from competitors. But we then hear, once they've actually worked with us, we have the ability to actually deliver on that, rather than the classic example of, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail, and we're trying to force things that way. We can really be open and honest and take clients down the path that is best for them.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I love the fact of talking about, obviously, the partner to vendor side. It's something that, as a recruiter, that when I'm speaking with my clients, that I always say whenever I'm starting a relationship with them, of, look, I'm a partner of your company. You are literally sending me out on behalf of your business, using your brand to bring in candidates. I said, if you treat me like a vendor, or you just treat me like someone doing a service for you, then you're not going to get the level of service that you need from. So it's all about, I love the term of being a partner. I think anyone that you're getting a software from or a service, if you can truly have a partnership, one, you will understand each other, but you will have that greater level of respect. And I think as a salesperson, if your client is respecting you, one, you're not going to get heartbroken. It's pretty much avoidable. They will try and look after you. I think as salespeople, we get our heart broken all the time by clients of just going, a deal gets pulled from here. There's a bit of red tape that comes in here. So I think just having that mentality of when being very transparent with clients of the, okay, we're a partnership, I think it's a really strong word.
I wholeheartedly agree, Oliver. And something that often goes unsaid because we get so focused on numbers and revenue and things is it's also just a lot more fun, right? When you're really working with someone in tandem and you view each other as helping each other and someone that you really trust and can go to each other for counsel and rise together, it's just a more pleasant day at the office, which, as you said, we can have some rough ones in this business, but it can be terrific as well.
Yeah, definitely. Look, for me, like when I look back on currently and previously, the best clients I have is when I'm talking to when I've got their WhatsApp or I'm in a group chat on Slack. That's when I know that I've got a partnership, because it's a back and forth thing. There's no having to be super formal through email or anything. It's like the odd quick message, quick reply. And you're like, cool, that's a partnership, because you're willing to, that person's taking their time out of their personal time most of the time. When someone's on their phone or is there maybe with their family, quickly sending you a text message. So they respect you because they want to work as quickly as you want to work. And as a recruiter, for me, it's all about my fill rate. The quicker I can fill a role and move on, the quicker I can bring in new clients and my revenue number will increase. So it's like at the moment, I've got around 11 clients on at the moment. Probably a little bit too much for just myself, but I need some of them to fill quicker. So I can actually, so the workload goes down and I can start focusing on other stuff. So I absolutely love we talked about that. But where I'd love to sort of take the conversation is a little bit about recruitment. So I'd love to understand what Jody's method of madness is for getting the right individuals in place.
Sure. We do use a variety of mechanisms, Oliver. We use recruiters. We use in-house. We have some programs for existing employees to recommend folks to us. And if they end up coming on board, then there are monetary bonuses that go out. Just like with clients, introducing us to prospects that they may know and say, hey, here's a warm handoff. These people did a great job for us. They probably do a great job for you. There's nothing better than that. Same is the case with employees. If we get a strong recommendation from someone that we know is a strong performer here, then we feel pretty confident that, one, the person they're going to recommend is going to do a good job. And then there's that implicit extra level of effort that usually both of them put into it, right? The person who recommends says to their friend, colleague, whoever it is, all right, I'm putting my neck on the line for you, so you better not let me down. And then that person feels the responsibility to them. So that's the best case scenario. But quite honestly, that doesn't happen all that often. The recruiters that we look for are really those, and Oliver, you described it well, that take the time to understand really what our business is like, because it's not the same as every other partner. And I recognize every organization describes themselves as unique, right? And there are probably more commonalities than some of us would like to admit. But at the same time, there are differences for all of us. And if you don't understand those, you're going to place candidates with us, or at least put them in front of us, that are not the right fits. And unfortunately, it's not always immediately apparent, but it becomes pretty clear fairly quickly. So that's the second thing that we do. And the third thing that we do is really, we've been around for a long time for an IT firm, and we try to build a culture both internally but also with our clients that is one of mutual respect, candor, honesty in a way that is truly and genuinely designed to improve each other, as opposed to not sniping or bringing each other down or hogging of credit, those types of things. And that goes for clients and internal employees alike. And that type of thing then has benefits like people post positive reviews on employer review sites. People talk to their friends. Clients move or get let go for a downsizing or something, and they come to us. So those are sort of organic sources that we feel make ourselves better as an organization in the moment, but also pay dividends down the line.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, I always, whenever I speak to any client, I'm like, if they say I'm putting all our eggs in one basket and it's just on me, I'm like, that's totally fine. But actually, sometimes you do need to spread the risk and you do need to look at different avenues. I love, obviously, you've got the referral side in there for your employees, because actually, as much I probably shouldn't say it as an external recruiter, they're probably the best places to go, especially as in like maybe as an early startup. You maybe don't have the capital to pay for an external agency. We're not the cheapest of services, but if you can get a good internal referral coming through, then it's going to save time, it's going to save energy, and you've already had a back channel of, okay, I worked with this guy, he was great, he achieved these numbers. What you get at the moment is there's a vast amount of people on the market. A lot of people are quite desperate as well. So I'm seeing at the moment a lot of resumes with a ton of lies, and I mean just a lot of figures that have been skewed. I mean, I had a guy the other day tell me that he was a top rep at a company, achieved 180% of his quota. I back channeled it because I was a bit like, you don't give me those vibes. He ended up getting 18% that year.
Wow.
I was like, you can't. I just spoke to him. I was like, look, mate, I understand you've been out of work for 2-3 months now, but you can't be doing that. You've just ruined any chance you had. The biggest piece of advice I give people at the moment is you've got to be honest and show how you reacted and responded to a failure. That's what people want to see. Is if I was a leader and I'm hiring someone and I go, okay, they went 100%, 100%, 40%, 150%. Cool.
Right.
Okay, maybe a few of your deals didn't close at the end of the year and you just then it rolled into next year. Great. These things happen. So if you're doing these longer deal cycles of 9 to 12 months, the likelihood of it happening is very strong.
Sure.
But I know people are just scared to sometimes be a bit honest about those things.
Yeah,
But
the trust factor, Oliver, I think is something that is just both organizationally and at an individual level, which of course the individuals define the organization, is something that we probably can't hammer home enough, right? In every aspect of what we're talking about here. I mean, that's just the reality. I find it sort of ironic when I think about the characteristics we look for in hires and how much they are often at odds with what the classic view of a salesperson is, right? Many people think of sales as pushy, selfish, not caring about what the client is, needing to one call close. What can I do to get you in this car today? Kind of a thing. And that just couldn't be further from what we find to be either the right thing to do or successful in terms of our best employees. So you couldn't be more right with the trust in every aspect, because the classic line, right? It takes a lifetime to build trust and a moment to break it. And it's very, very true.
Definitely. It's something I talk about a lot on the podcast. That I live by 3 mantras of when I started my company, was that I wanted to be honest, trustworthy, and transparent. They're the 3 most important things that I think that a lot of salespeople overlook, especially the honesty and transparency side. You get so many salespeople, especially younger salespeople like myself, being just trying to skew the truth or avoid telling the client exactly what's going on. And in the end, I realized very quickly that just by being honest and transparent, one, you develop a higher level of trust, but it's actually that level of respect again, that they're going to be like, okay, cool, this guy's actually working with me. He's not, like, at the end of the day, most people forget that we're all human. Most of us can read when someone's lying to us. We think we're being smart, but 90% of the time they're going to see it or they're going to find out eventually. So just being upfront and transparent is so important.
Absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more, Oliver.
Where I'd love to sort of get your perspective on, we've talked about obviously getting the right team in place. I'd love to know how you guys go about building a culture within the organization. Is there any sort of strategies, initiatives that you've developed?
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting evolution over time, because we were, for most of our history, the traditional firm where everybody came into the office every single day and we were there the full work day. Meetings were in person with our clients and prospects. all those types of things. And that worked very well. And then, of course, COVID came along, and we always had the ability to, I shouldn't say always, but for years had the ability to work remotely or have remote meetings. A big part of our business is actually collaboration. So that was sort of ingrained in us, but we still valued those in-person relationships. Of course, COVID comes along, suspends that for a while. That has now opened up a bit, but of course, everyone's still, you're still seeing companies kind of figure out where exactly that right balance is. Is full remote, that might be too much. Fully in the office, that might not allow us to attract and keep the best talent, either because the local employees, the lifestyles or their responsibilities don't allow for that, or it's just a fairly small pool, right? Depending on where you are. And heck, with some of the more advanced and more cutting edge technologies, the pool is just small no matter where you are. So being able to cast that wider net, of course, with remote employees has huge value, but it also creates an additional challenge in terms of culture. So one of the things that we're very proud of as evidence of our culture is that our average tenure at last number I heard was roughly 9 years as an organization, which is pretty remarkable. And there are a handful of things that go into that. One is I talked about listening to our clients. And one of the reasons that becomes very easy for people on our team, one reason is that we practice, and we practice it all the time. But two is that that's the way we operate internally. Anybody from the person who has been here the day after the CEO founded the company, because he's still involved, the founder, to the person who started this morning, has the same ability to pick up the phone and call John Weidenhammer, and he will listen, and he will have a conversation. He will take any advice or counsel or guidance under advisement. That doesn't mean we're going to do everything that anybody suggests, but it certainly means that it's taken seriously. And that really is pervasive throughout the organization. So I think that's a big thing. I think a culture of continuous improvement. So every employee has a defined development plan that they develop in conjunction with their manager. And then those are actually built into their annual review. So there are formal trainings, there are informal trainings, there are practices, there are shadowing. We get together on a monthly and quarterly basis as a sales team, and that is in person, so that we try to bring that in to the extent possible. We do have some folks that are farther away, so we bring them in remotely using the appropriate technologies. But at least once a year, the entire company, no matter where they're located in the nation, comes together physically. So we do see value in those types of things. And I guess the final thing I'll say, because it's a bit of a, I don't want to say a catch-all, but it encompasses many different things, is specific to sales. We don't really believe in the idea of born salespeople. We believe that sales is a vocation just like any other. It has skills that need to be developed, honed, practiced, and evolved over time as the world changes. And so we really hone in on that and are continuously looking for ways to share ideas, to train, to role play, to practice, to test ourselves and push ourselves and ensure that we really are working at our skills, because we all can use that continuously. No one's a finished project. And when we find people, that's one of the key personality traits or mindsets that we screen for, is that growth mindset and the interest in doing so, along with an innate curiosity. So that's kind of, when you put all that together, and with the final thing, and I probably should have said this first, is people that genuinely care and respect each other. Right. We, for better or for worse, we spend more time with our colleagues than we do with our friends, our family, almost anybody else. And so if we don't have people that get along, and that doesn't mean everybody the same, right? We want diversity of thought, background, experience, because that brings value to everybody. But we also need people that come from a place of respect, care, genuine concern, and a willingness to help each other.
Yeah, definitely. I love that last point. I mean, it's not something that I deal with on a day-to-day basis anymore, being a one-man company, but it is something that whenever I was looking for a company, it's like, okay, cool. I want to be surrounded by like-minded people that support, that want to grow. This is why I left my first company to go and work for a startup, was that I was bought into them as more than I was actually the vision of the company. It was okay, cool. I'm going to spend 14, 15 hours some days with these individuals. If I don't like them, I'm probably going to butt heads with them and it's going to be a horrible experience. I loved you talked as well about sort of the remote working and the hybrid is something that I've been giving a lot of thought to recently. And obviously I work remotely and I've never changed. But I've got a client at the moment that they are all in the office, based in Miami, and it's just a back and forth between we open it up and we go remote, and they aren't budging, and I can appreciate it. And they're saying we want this sort of candidate. And I'm like, this sort of candidate does not exist in Miami. Miami it's the first time I've done roles in Miami, and not to diss anyone who lives there, but I've never had more candidates not turn up to an interview.
Really?
I don't know what it is. It's just it's been so bizarre. Like they've been booked in, they've accepted, and then you never hear from them again. And I'm like, what is going on? This place, and these are like account executives, enterprise account executives, VPs of sales. And I'm like, what is going on? It's so random. But like, so I'm having this conversation of I work with an identical company and they have a fully remote role. This is why I work with them. They actually gave me a referral, and they're fully remote. I can have 6 resumes on their desk and the role. So I picked up the same role with them 3 days ago, 6 resumes on the desk, and next week we've got an offer coming for one of them already.
Wow, terrific.
3 days. Yeah. And when you put those timelines with one another, and they're like, this company's slightly newer, the one who's only in office, and I get it, and I completely understand. But if you want them to feel quicker and with a higher caliber of person, the remote model does give you that, as you said, the bigger pond of people to sort of fish in. But it is each their own, and it's definitely a really fun topic to talk with at the moment, because a few clients of mine are starting to go, we'd like more people in the office. And I can understand it, but then I also go like, is it going to change anything retrospectively?
Yeah, I think when you think about those types of things, and we do all the time, there needs to be a reason beyond just physically being there, right? If everyone's in the office and yet they're behind closed doors, they're on a phone call, whatever the case may be, and for all intents and purposes, they're just sitting next to each other. They're not actually together, if that makes sense, right? They're not interacting. They're not talking to each other. They're not listening to each other. Then there's no benefit to it, right? If people are together and they're sharing ideas and they're walking over to each other's desks and asking a question, if junior people, who I think really benefit the most, quite honestly, from being in the office, senior people, I think generally are a little bit better positioned. They've got more seasoning, they've got more experience, they're a little more self-sufficient, they kind of have their model down cold. But junior people are figuring all that out, and that's not a knock. Everybody was a junior person once, right? So, and historically, you benefited from just that sort of ambient awareness of what was going on around you, hearing people, seeing the way people operated. Those are the things that I think we need to be intentional about and conscious about. And when people are in the office, that doesn't mean we have to spend the whole day together and just not do anything else. But it does mean let's be smart about, hey, and let's spend an hour when everybody's in on Thursday having a roundtable discussion about generative AI, to use a hot topic, right? Something like that, so that we can exchange. What are you hearing out there? What are you seeing? What questions are you being asked? Where are conversations slowing down? Where are they really picking up? Just those types of things where you really benefit. And then being in front of clients is hard to beat for a specific purpose. I think a meeting about, okay, we need to do discovery and gather the information so that we can put a proposal together for you. Video's fine. We're there, we're in, we're out, we're doing it for a very ad hoc purpose. What we lose are what I always think of as the hallway conversations, right? Walking to the conference room, walking out to the car, and the person says, man, thanks for coming out. I'm slammed. And you say, well, really, what's going on? And they say, this, that, and the other, this blew up. I'm fighting this fire. I can't get this across the transom. And next thing you know, you got more out of that 3-minute walk to the car than you did the whole actual purpose of the meeting section. So those are things that we do really try to reinforce. And we talked earlier about the relationships, and it is hard to beat. But at the same time, I can meet with 8 clients in a day. If I do it virtually, maybe I can fit 3 in, depending on where they are, if I'm going on site. So all about the balance, as you said, and it, as you mentioned, interesting conversation will be for a while, because there is no right or wrong answer, and it depends on a lot of factors.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I'm unfortunately for myself, all my clients are in the US, so I never get to meet them unless I come over. And to most people's amazed that I've been doing this market for 3 years now, and I've never stepped foot in the US. The US funds my whole life, but I've never been there myself. I will be coming I am coming at the end of this year to come and see a few clients, but I'm always a big believer, though, that actually a shake of a hand and a stare in someone's eye will always leave the bigger lasting impression. It's something that my girlfriend's very fortunate. She does a market where she does recruitment as well. And she does a market in the UK where she can go and see clients and visit them. And she went to a big air show yesterday. And I was like, just shake as many people's hands and make it lasting and memorable. And that is literally the be all and end all of it. It's the most amazing thing of the people remember you. And actually, I think you develop, as we were talking about earlier, that partnership does become real, even just from a shake of hand. I know that if I shake someone's hand, I will very unlikely not forget them.
Right.
I don't know what it is. Is that physical touch? I think you just don't forget. But Zoom calls obviously can be forgetful if you're just on for 15, 20 minutes. I've got one of these weird brains that just remembers. I can remember my clients from like 5 or 6 years ago, remember them by name and where they live. Just a bit of an odd one. My brain, I reckon, is just like a CRM, to be perfectly honest with you. My girlfriend, she goes to me, yeah, it's a good trait, but awful trait at the same time. So I get lazy with it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I'm interested in what your girlfriend says, or does she say it's the double-edged sword?
Well, because I basically I don't have a CRM because I don't really need one. And she just goes, you keep storing everything in your brain. Eventually, your brain's just going to pack in and you're going to forget something important. Don't know how I do it. It just works, and it's my method. I always say to anyone I've managed in my previous companies, I said, like, I will tell you how to do the best practices, or I'll coach you and I'll train you and I'll get you being a very good recruiter. But do not, whatever you do, copy what I do. There is no point. I have about 5 notepads on my table that all for different things. I just have a method that just no one should ever copy. But it works for my brain and how it is. And I always say this to my team as well, like, be flair. If you have a wet process that doesn't work, don't try and be a robot and copy. I came from a corporate world which tried to make me be a robot. It tried to make me do the same thing as everybody else. And in the end, that's why I had to go and work for a startup, because I couldn't conform. I was butting heads with too many people of them trying to tell me what to do. And probably why I'm an entrepreneur now. I don't want to be told no. I don't want people telling me you can't do this.
Well, you bring up a good point, because the more people that rely on let's just use the CRM, right? That rely on that data that's in there, the more structured you have to be and more consistent everybody has to be in following the same process, right? We did an analysis not long ago, and I think at the time there were 7 different roles within the organization that use the data in the CRM. So if you, as a salesperson, which most salespeople don't like documentation, it's just a fact. Some do. I happen to be a huge fan. I love it, but most people don't. But if you look at it and just say, well, I'm Oliver, right? I can remember it. That may very well be true. But what about those other 6 people that need to be able to look in there, right? They can't access your brain. So there's a very real thing. You made the smart choice based on that to strike out on your own. Whereas we always try to walk that line where we recognize everyone's a little different. Everyone has a different style. And if you try to make your style one that's not natural for you, we talked about honesty earlier, it will come off as disingenuous, and then it's broken. You're not going to get anywhere like that. So we need to allow space for people to be themselves and be authentic, while at the same time agreeing to a set of principles and processes that allow for others to benefit from the work as well.
Yeah, definitely. And look, the authenticity side is actually something that takes me back to my first ever job in recruitment, where it was a cold calling house. And I had quite a lot. I had quite a lot of success when I was there, and would have people come and ask me, younger recruiters, going like, "What are you doing different? Why are you performing well?" And I would just go, "Well, everyone just tells me I just sound like myself on the phone. I've always been the sort of guy that would sit on the phone." Lean back in the chair, very relaxed, or maybe I'll be stood up, just sort of laughing and joking. Never really changed my. If I met you in the street, I was speaking the same on the phone, and
Right.
that was probably why I always said to people that I'm not the most intelligent, I'm not the most illiterate person. However, people generally quite buy into me because it's quite like speaking with me sometimes. And most of my clients have come from that. If I ask the client, why do you work with me? They probably go, well, the only person who doesn't annoy the shit out of me. Like as a recruiter, like a lot of recruiters annoy the hell out of people. And so if you can have that trait, and I always say this to any young recruiter, just don't be annoying and you'll probably be all right. And I said there is a line, there is professional persistence, and you do have to obviously put pressure in certain moments so you don't get walked all over. But I've made all right money just by trying to be quite a nice guy, to be honest. And I've had people on the podcast that have started listing off these books saying, oh, you're this type of person. And strategic selling has said that if you do this, then you're not going to be a great performer. And I'm like, fine. All the books can say whatever they want, but if it works for you, it works for you. And that's what I say, just run with it.
Yeah, without a doubt. If any one of the books had it all figured out, we don't do it that way. And by the way, usually that would mean then it would stop working, right? So people would get wise to it.
Exactly. We like emails all over again of the suddenly they're working great, and then out of nowhere everyone does them and they don't work. So
right.
But look, where that's to take the conversation is a little bit about your journey. Obviously, it's been 20 years. I'd love to know what you came in at the company as, and then how that journey's sort of been.
Sure. I think I was very fortunate in the way that I came in, because I came in essentially straight out of school, less than a year after graduating college. And I sort of stumbled into it. I got connected to the organization through a college classmate who was in recruiting and called me up and said, hey, I've got something I think would be a good fit for you. And so I went more out of respect for him than anything else, quite honestly, and ended up hitting it off with the folks that I spoke with at the organization, was impressed with them, and got hired into what at the time I think was called a sales associate. But essentially, I think the best description is it was an apprenticeship. I was basically attached to a senior account executive who had been selling for decades, and I was whatever she needed, I helped her with, right? Whether that was generate quotes, look things up, plan things out, enter stuff into the CRM. But so through that, but also most importantly, in every meeting that she had, I was there, often not participating other than listening and absorbing and learning. But through that, did that for about a year, and just was the best entry point into not just sales, but the business world. I had come from college and of course took business courses and things like that, but it's a whole different ball of wax when you actually get out there and start to see it. I mean, something I still chuckle about a little bit is how jarring it was for me to call people by their first names that were much my senior in every sense. But that was something I had to learn. I was very uncomfortable at first, right? But sort of that equal business stature type of mindset and so forth. So that was how I started. About a year in, a couple of other sales folks from the organization ended up moving on to other positions, and that opened up both some opportunities as well as some clients, which was a great way to transition into really kind of striking out on my own that way. And so had a little bit of a built-in client base, and then was charged with building that both organically as well as through new business. Did that for about 7 years. And over time, my boss was getting promoted, and there was a gap in the sales manager position there, here, I should say. And so I got the opportunity to step into that role and start to lead the team, and then went from director and up to CRO. So it's been I still get a lot of value out of that history, because everything that I would ask someone on my team to do at any level, I've been asked to do in the past, or I can relate, or I'm doing currently myself as well. So I think that's important when we talk about that authenticity and that empathy as well. But it's been great because it also allowed me to develop internal relationships across the organization, which is just as important. It's one of the things we do as part of our onboarding is we have a list of key folks in all aspects of the organization, different roles, and new sales folks meet with every one of them as much to start to feel part of that team. You talked about culture, especially with remote employees earlier. So you start to get to know people and develop relationships, but also now I know who to go to when I have a question about X or Y and those types of things. So by the time I got to be responsible for more than just myself, I knew who to go to. I knew who the key players were. I had that level of relationships, and that has really been great. And as I alluded to earlier, I mean, just terrific people across the board. Everyone's been very willing to help from the day I walked in the door, and that just, I can't put a price on that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, I mean, obviously, kudos to your friend who got you the job in the first place. So
Yeah.
I'm sure he's over the moon. You've been there 20 years. That whatever fee he got for finding the job, it's been worth its money, I'm sure.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, an awesome journey. I think what I loved was obviously your first role was a lot of observing, listening. It's something that I always advise any of my younger friends who are getting into recruitment of that. The reason I had early success was that we had the capability of that. My first couple of weeks was not, I wasn't calling anyone. I was spent, you could dial into anybody who was on the phone. So you could just listen in the background. And so I would just figure out, I'd have a list of, okay, who's the top billers in the office? Who do I want to listen to? As soon as on the phone, boom, listening to what they're saying, how they're saying it, how they're communicating, how they're handling certain situations, and just starting to build this map in my mind of how things work. And that was the most crucial thing of that. As soon as I was on the phone, nothing really fazed me. I sort of made myself a bit at the start, a bit of a parrot of that. I tried to use some of their funny phrases or their certain ways of doing it. And eventually you find what works for you. But I think early on, if you have that exposure to what was good, what was bad, and seeing it, like when I'm learning, it's got to be active, it's got to be live, it's got to be. I'm not a great reader. I don't really enjoy it. I don't really pull the information from the paper. But if I can hear it or see it, then jobs are good for me. So yeah, the fact you had that must have been really, really advantageous for you. Okay. Try to say the word.
Yeah, no doubt. And you probably, sometimes I feel like I'm beating the same drum, but there's a reason for it, right? I probably said listening half a dozen times in our conversation so far, and that's intentional, and also it just has become ingrained, right? And in every aspect, because I think to your point, if you're truly listening and then being genuine in response and being yourself, you're probably 75% of the way there, and probably 50% ahead of most of the people that you're competing against, quite honestly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the most simple trait, but the amount of salespeople that forget about listening is it is quite funny, really. That you can just go. I remember having so many phone recording sessions and going through it with my manager very early on, and just going like, "Did you not just hear what he said? Did you not see the buying sign or that hook that he's basically really insinuating? Come on, elaborate on what you're saying." And then you listen back, you go, crap, like, how did I miss that? Or what was I thinking about? And so I always had a thing when I first started sales of that I had a thing on the top of my my computer that my manager printed out in massive bold text saying, "Open your eyes." Not because I was falling asleep at the desk, but that I always had blinkers on. Okay, so I had one objective and I wanted to do a deal, but actually forgetting about everything else that's going on in and around the scenario. So it was open your eyes to everything. Or in this case, it would be opening your ears and listening to everything that's being said, because 90% of the time you actually are missing the actual buying side or that hook of that you want to know a little bit more. So listening, super important.
Yeah, but, great advice.
Where I'd love to take the conversation is literally just to finish it off, is a bit about work-life balance. Obviously, it's hard for any salesperson, leader. Is there anything that you have done yourself to find more balance between work and life?
Yeah, it is. It is a balance, like so much in life, right? It's not much different than that, but it is a challenge because we want to be first and foremost for our clients, right? We want to serve our clients. So anytime you become disconnected from them, there's a little feeling in the back of your mind saying, am I betraying my purpose here, right? I'm not here for my client at this moment. But we also remind ourselves that any yes is a no to something else. And if you say no to your family or your friends or recharging yourself, then you are not able to be as effective serving your clients because you're not at your peak. So I think one of the things, just personally, certainly in sales, there are going to be times where you're going to have to work late. You're going to have to put in time when maybe you would prefer not to, but you need to get something turned around. You need to respond. You need to help. We have part of the thing that helps us is we do have a client care center such that if there's a technical emergency where someone really needs support, that's a 24/7 mechanism that sales really isn't connected to. They call directly into it. And so we're not ever a bottleneck. So that helps first and foremost. But the other thing is I'm a big believer. I have two cell phones. I have a work cell phone and I have a personal cell phone. And typically, and they're both sitting right next to me right now. They're both on, and I could receive calls and messages on both. But when I am in a situation where I'm sitting down with my family for dinner, or I'm going to my friends for their birthday, whatever, you name it. It doesn't even have to be that serious. But I need to disconnect and focus on the present. I can turn off that work phone and I can come back to it and then address whatever needs to be addressed. And of course, make sure that you do. But I think that's such a simple thing. A lot of people do it, but many, many, many people don't. And I recommend it to everybody. And I think the other thing is we need to be, as leaders, we need to encourage that type of thinking in our team as well. Because if we're sending an email at 10 o'clock at night and then at 7 in the morning, we're saying, hey, why didn't I hear back from you? Well, then everybody feels like they're on the clock 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. And that is not a leader into peak performance. It just isn't. People get burnt out, people leave, people just operate at a suboptimal level. So I'm a big believer in breaks. I'm a big believer in taking time to fill your own bucket personally, because I think that truly then enables you to do best for others. Now, at the same time, I do think there's a very real function of helping others can help you personally as well, just in terms of your well-being, your health, your feeling, such that sometimes if I'm feeling down and bummed out about something, whether it's work or personal, but then I can go help a client, that can turn me around, that can pull me out of it. So that's sort of an inverted way to look at work-life balance in a sense, but I think it's very true, and it also helps with motivation. So those are some things about how we look at it and how I personally approach it.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I couldn't agree more. Actually, the UK apparently they're in the parliaments at the moment, apparently trying to pass a law that it will be illegal for you to be punished if you're not replying to messages after like 6 p.m. Let's say your working hours are like, so they're apparently discussing that at the moment. Not that it really would affect me. I think in any sales environment, if that's the environment you've agreed and you've signed up for and you've got deal closing, then you do what you got to do. There are scenarios where your manager could wait, but if it's really, really important, then fair enough.
Right.
And I do agree that though, you've got to be able to separate the both. I mean, I operate everything through my one phone, and the whole business goes through it. But I've been quite good at just putting my phone aside and focusing on when it's time to spend time with my girlfriend in the evening. Obviously, I work till 1 a.m. most nights, but I will dedicate certain parts of my evening to go, look, you're going to get my full attention. Tell me about your day, whatever it is, what's going on tomorrow. And then we'll do that. And I think it's just about, I've had to learn to, because of the hours I do, because of doing American hours from here, that I've had to integrate work and life together. But I think if you can manage your time and manage, okay, when you're going to do something, or if I want to do something, I'll go and do it. And I think this is fortunate of having my own company, but I will then just make up the hours in another time. Maybe I'll work later that night when I get back, or wake up a bit earlier. And I think as always, and this is what I would have for the same when I hire and I grow this company, it's going to be very much like, I expect from you that you manage your time. If you're of senior level, if you need to do something, you go and do it. But I expect you to make up for the work you've lost, but in another time. As long as the outputs, the results are the same, I don't care. I don't care if they work 4 hours a day and they're outperforming the rest of the people. Why does it make any difference? And I always used to say this to any staff I had. I'm like, do you need to be here? No. Okay, well, go home. Like, there is no point you being here. We always had this thing in our mantra in our last company was that if you could do your job in 6 hours and you really have done everything you possibly could that day, just go home. Like, actually go and rest, go and refuel. Then the following day, you might have a busier, longer day, and you're going to thank me the fact of you've had 3 hours extra rest. Like, that is 100% certain. And I just think if you can have that mentality, I think you will find that balance between work and life. I know that term people don't like, but it's just about integrating them and finding a balance between the two. Everyone has different ways of doing it.
Yeah, terrific. Yeah, and I agree. I think the pushback on the phrase work-life balance is that it puts them at odds with each other when it doesn't always have to be. But I do think it's important to acknowledge that they are different modes, different phases, and so there whether you call it work-life integration, work-life balance, there's work, there's life, and you got to make them both work together in some fashion.
Definitely. I mean, if I'm out for a few beers, I'm not doing any emails because I can't spell half the time. And if I've had a few beers, then it's probably not going to be very good anyway. So there does have to be this balance and this separation of obviously everyone doesn't drink, but yeah, there's I mean, for myself, that's how it's going to have to be. But look, I always ask one final question to all my guests. If you could give one piece of advice to 26-year-old Jody, what advice would you give him?
I would probably say be genuinely curious. I think that can be very broad, but if you're genuinely curious, you will automatically listen. You will automatically be interested in what you're doing. I could be selling vacuum cleaners, but if I had approached it with a genuine curiosity about how the suction mechanism works and what challenges people have with prolonged vacuum cleaner use and on down the line, then all of a sudden I'm going to be into it. And when I'm into it, I'm going to be passionate. And if I'm passionate about it, people will be able to tell, and therefore I'll be more effective, whether it's sales or any other occupation. So I think that would be it. Be genuinely curious as much as possible. And it tends to feed on itself, which is nice also.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I absolutely love that answer. It's something I'm very curious about. A lot of things I get down myself in rabbit holes all the time of just being too curious. I go, crap, no, you've got to actually do some work, mate. You can't just keep Googling about this. And I think it's how I learn. I think it's how most people will learn. If you've got this curiosity with you, and half the reason probably I started a company was I was just curious about, can I do this? Can I do it by myself? If you fail, you fail. But yeah, superb advice. And look, I can't thank you enough for being a guest on the show. I know my listeners are going to super enjoy this. It's been super insightful. And I can't wish you any more success and hopefully another 20 years perhaps working for Weidenhammer.
Thank you so much, Oliver. It's really been a pleasure. I enjoyed the conversation and I wish you all the best, man. Take care.
Thanks so much.